If we don't have agreements with 3 of them by September 14th, then there will be action.
This is the first time that we're looking at a possible strike against all of Detroit's big 3 automakers.
A 10-day strike could cost $5 billion.
Do you think she is the best running mate?
She's the vice president. That's the job description. You don't do that much.
Kamala Harris has not stepped up in anybody's eyes. Not Democrats' eyes, not Republicans' eyes.
A federal judge once again rules the DACA immigration program is illegal. The government is now barred from approving new applications. This issue is expected to head all the way to the Supreme Court. A serial squatter returns to a Louisiana home. The squatter was released from jail on Monday. The owners say he's already returned, and a for sale sign is up in their yard. Fans of NSYNC go wild as the boy band reunite on stage for the first time in 10 years.
They're going to start touring again.
Are they really?
Yeah. So now
we needed more NSYNC.
We begin this hour with the high-stakes showdown between America's big 3 automakers and the United Auto Workers. That is after NSYNC.
Yep.
Little Justin Timberlake,
Yeah.
little dancing, and then to the truckers, right?
Yep.
All right, if the two sides don't reach a contract agreement by midnight, the union is vowing to go on strike in a move that could send the U.S. economy could cost the U.S. economy billions of dollars.
Mark Meredith knows all about it. He's live at the White House. Mark.
Brian, Pete, and Ainsley, good morning to all 3 of you. Representatives for the United Auto Workers say their members want a huge increase in pay and better benefits, and that if they don't get it by the end of tonight, it's very likely that they'll go on strike. And as I mentioned, that'll happen within a matter of hours. Economists studying what's happening here very closely because there is a view that if a strike goes on, even some 10 days, it could cost the U.S. economy some $5 billion. The White House says it is eager to see a deal reached.
He's encouraged the parties to stay at the table and to work 24/7 to get a win-win agreement that keeps UAW workers at the heart of our auto future and ensures UAW jobs are good, middle-class jobs.
Any strike would impact 3 big automakers, Ford, General Motors, and Chrysler parent company Stellantis. The UAW does have a list of demands upwards of a 40% increase in pay. They want a shorter work week and additional perks. The automakers have offered to increase pay, but not to that full amount. And so far, those demands still out there, the labor union not happy with.
We are preparing to strike these companies in a way they've never seen before. Our message to the companies was clear. If we don't have a fair contract by midnight on Thursday night, we will strike.
The timing here for the White House really couldn't be any worse because the president's ready to talk a lot about the economy going forward. He's talked a lot about his efforts to build up America's unions. And we also are hearing from a former UAW official who talked about where things stand with the Democratic Party. He says the UAW members feel abandoned by the Democratic Party. I think there's a segment of the party that sees itself as serving corporations rather than the common good. We've had a lot of disappointments. So there is going to be a lot of focus on what happens over the next several hours. We don't know how long a strike would last, or would it be something that drags on for weeks, for months? And we also are waiting to find out exactly how this will be carried out. The union's kind of previewing what's going to happen. As for President Biden, guys, today he is going to be talking about the economy, or Bidenomics, as he likes to call it, comparing it to Maganomics. It's going to be hitting his predecessor, former President Trump. But as we've been talking about all morning, Pete, Ainsley, and Brian, with these economic data, there's still a lot of concern about where the U.S. economy is today. Guys,
For sure. Mark, thank you very much.
You bet.
To bring it full circle, you might say the auto workers, the White House, and the big 3 automakers, they're not in sync.
Nice.
Thank you, Carl.
Nice.
Thank
you very much.
Just saying.
Nailed it.
It was so important in that montage for me to weigh in on them touring. It was just something that should be examined.
Critical, top of the hour.
Right. All right, so let's talk about Joe Biden, and let's talk about the fact that in so many ways, he is hitting a critical point, not only in his presidency, but in his career.
Big time.
And if you see the amount of people that have watched him on the world stage make up stories and movie references and songs that were actually movies, and then say things that don't make sense, like I was at 9/11 the next day, when we know you weren't there until later 2 weeks. When you see the cadence of the questions in the press room, not coming from Fox or Peter Doocy or Jackie Heinrich, but from the mass audience, Karine Jean-Pierre just left yesterday because she didn't like the type of questions she was getting.
Well, when you have most of the country concerned about his age, that's not just Republicans. Democrats are even saying this, too. It's something that you have to pay attention to. And David Ignatius, with the Washington Post columnist and a novelist who's on Brian's radio show all the time, he said, you know, it basically pains me to say that I'm concerned about his age or I don't want him to run again because he's a big Democrat. But he did say he doesn't think that Biden should run for re-election. He said he's citing polls in his article that most voters think that Biden's age is an issue. And because of his age, voters will focus more on Kamala Harris. He's worried about her. And he said that they risk undoing the greatest achievement of their presidency, he says, which was stopping Trump. And he does not want either one of them to run. He says that Joe never should have let his son serve on the Burisma board. So it's an interesting article. And when Quinnipiac does a poll and they ask, do you think Biden is too old to effectively serve another term? 69% said yes, he's too old. 26% said no. 5% said they don't know.
And here's the flip side of it, too, because when you ask the same question about Donald Trump, is he too old to effectively serve as president? 62% say no. So with Biden, it's not really about age. Yes, Trump is a few years younger. It's not really an age issue.
Right.
It's a capability issue.
Right.
It's a competency issue. It's a stand in front of a fundraiser last night and say, I don't really know why the Republicans are trying to impeach me. I guess it's because they want to shut down the government.
What are you talking about?
Are you living under a rock? Are you in that much of a bubble? Do you know it's Thursday? That's what voters react to. So they can spin Bidenomics, they can spin his experience or he loves his son or wisdom, but average voters, and mostly Democrats at this point, see exactly what happens on their television, and they want a different option.
Commander-in-Chief. He's over our military. He's representing the United States on the world stage. It's pretty embarrassing. We wish him all the best. We don't want him to fall. We don't want him to be sick. We don't want him to rattle off and tell false stories. But this is the President of the United States. We have a choice next year, next November, and we have to vote for someone who's competent, who can represent our country.
So I would add this. If you want to compare Trump and Biden, and you say, well, 77 and 80, Trump did one straight hour on CNN, standing up, taking all hostile questions.
And he destroyed an entire network.
He just sat down with Megyn Kelly for 2 hours on a podcast. Took the most aggressive questions, deep policy questions, aggressive questions, interesting questions for 2 hours. Joe Biden hasn't done one interview since July. He's the president. How do you possibly not have a press conference and sit down for an interview and do your job and want your job since July and spend all your time in Delaware? Your day ends Friday at noon, and it doesn't start until Monday at noon. Who can do a job like this on those hours?
Everyone inside the White House, everyone inside that press corps knows everything you just said is correct. The question is, when will they admit it? David Ignatius admitted it when no one else would. Everyone's whispering it. The question is, when will Jill whisper it into Joe's head and say, Joe, it's time?
Why hasn't she yet?
Well, Nancy Pelosi had a very interesting interview, and this is probably my favorite soundbite of the morning, because Nancy Pelosi's asked if Kamala Harris is the right running mate for the president, and she dodges the question. Listen.
Is Vice President Kamala Harris the best running mate for this president?
He thinks so, and that's what matters. And by the way,
you think so?
She's very politically astute. I don't think people give her enough credit. People shouldn't underestimate what Kamala Harris brings to the table.
But do you think she is the best running mate, though?
She's the vice president of the United States. And when people say to me, well, why isn't she doing this or that? I said, because she's the vice president. That's the job description. You don't do that much.
You don't do that much as vice president. And she admits, everyone's asking me, why didn't she do anything?
There is so much wrong with that interview. Anderson Cooper knew it. Did you see?
He kind of had a smirk.
He had a smile. He's like, you're really not answering this question?
All you have to say is yes.
Yeah.
And it's the one thing she wouldn't say.
She's bright. She's affable. People haven't seen the best of her. I can't wait for the American people to
how does that affect her?
get to know her.
None of those statements are true.
Republicans will have a field day with that and have fun with that. But what did Democrats say? When they say Nancy Pelosi, who was so well respected, she was the speaker. You might not like her, but Democrats like, exactly. She's speaking for the party.
So is Dave Ignatius.
They know it, but they're in a box.
Do you realize?
In a box.
So after the midterms, in which they barely took the House and held the Senate, I thought for sure Biden would have the Democratic machine. But instead, they are pushing back against Iowa. They don't want the caucus quickly. The New Hampshire, they go, we don't want to start in New Hampshire. We want to start in South Carolina. Then we want to go to Nevada. The Democratic Party is now not only can't get their primary process together, the one candidate, RFK Jr., was told, if you want a primary, you pay for it. This party, who we found out was fixing it for Hillary Clinton against Bernie Sanders, and panicked when Bernie Sanders was winning in 2020, and single-handedly picked Joe Biden out of the wilderness. They are eliminating the democratic process for the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
Why?
Because it's a ruling regime.
They
have the
want
power.
the control. They want the power. I mean, people wonder all the time, who's running this country? It's not Joe Biden. Who's behind the scenes running this country? They have a whole team that chooses.
And that team doesn't want to lose the control that they have.
That's right.
Imagine you
That's
have
right.
the ability to be the shadow puppet and run the show.
Exactly.
Hey,
so
Joe,
many
just
of them
go
don't
over here.
Want, they're like, Joe's our candidate. We're behind the scenes running the country. Joe's our chosen one.
I guess, and it's hard to push back, but if you look at the quality of the people doing that, Jared Bernstein knows what he's talking about. You know, he's spinning numbers. He's very competent behind the lectern. When's the last time you were competent when you looked at a transportation sector like Pete Buttigieg said he was in charge? His Secretary of State on the world stage bringing us pride and patriotism. It's not happening. Our Secretary of Defense is invisible. So who is running it? There's no Rumsfeld character who is taking command of their department. So it is a mystery unless we're on automatic pilot and everyone just does their job and the country's rudderless.
Yeah, rudderless in this direction. Borders wide open. You wonder why. All right, now we're going to go to a story that is out of this world, you might say. This morning, NASA will release a long-awaited report on UFOs.
The Chris Christie question. This comes just one day after scientists in Mexico showed off what they claim are these mummified remains of aliens.
Yep, I think it's real. Lucas Tomlinson is live in Washington. Lucas, have you seen anything like that alive or dead up until yesterday?
Only when I watched the movie E.T., Brian. Now, NASA's highly anticipated UFO study is out this morning at 9:30, followed by a briefing at 10. Since last year, a panel of 16 experts, including a former Tomcat pilot and astronaut, Scott Kelly, have examined data related to UFO sightings, and not just in the sky or space, but even underwater as well. The team of experts is likely to make suggestions to NASA on how it can better collect information. Now, speaking of aliens, guys, in Mexico, lawmakers south of the border heard testimony and were presented with these two little artifacts, which were rolled out and some say resemble E.T. They were reportedly discovered in Peru in 2017 and date back 1,000 years, allegedly. Some think they look a little too perfect, though. Over the summer, Congress held a hearing on UFOs, which included this startling claim about the alleged recovery of some UFO wreckage.
Do we have the bodies of the pilots who piloted this craft?
As I've stated publicly already in my News Nation interview, biologics came with some of these recoveries, yeah.
Were they, I guess, human or non-human biologics?
Non-human, and that was the assessment of people with direct knowledge on the program I talked to that are currently still on the program.
This is UFO Briefing live on NASA TV, or stay tuned right here to the Fox News channel, of course, for the highlights. Guys?
Lucas, don't you feel good that if this was an alien that we could take them? Because they're small
and they only have three fingers?
But don't they just look a little too perfect, like somebody you'd buy in a store?
Exactly.
Yeah, can we show
1,000 years old?
Did they die
like
right
that?
like this?
Yeah, right.
Oh,
they
listen.
look like something that, I mean, you can make them out of sand at the beach.
Excuse
Look
me.
at them.
Can't
Doesn't
rule
that
that
look
out.
like?
That is what an alien looks like. If you guys want to be naysayers, go
It's
ahead.
a little E.T.
Got a lot of ribs.
Very skinny body.
Right.
Wow.
Skinny
No,
arms.
and no belly button.
That's how we know they're not human. All right.
Thank you, Lucas. Let's toss it over to Carly now, who's
First of all,
going
I
to
don't
attempt to do the headlines.
Yeah,
with
well,
hiccups.
first of all, I don't approve of you body shaming aliens. Let me just get that on the record there.
Sorry.
I do have some news to get to, starting with that Fox News alert that we told you about last hour. 4 officers
in Dallas, Texas, hurt this morning after they were struck by a suspected drunk driver. We are now learning the officers were in a standoff with a shooting suspect when they were hit. The driver was arrested, but it is unclear if the suspected shooter is in police custody. We're going to continue to follow this story and bring you the updates as we get them. The NBA Board of Directors unanimously approving tougher resting policies to ensure fans get the best product possible. The new rules will apply to players who sit out regular season games and in-season tournaments when they're not injured. Former NBA center Enes Kanter-Freedom, who joined us last hour, says this wouldn't be necessary if teams were hungry to secure a championship.
Fans are paying thousands of dollars to come and watch their favorite player. This new generation of players are becoming, I think, too soft every day. Back in the day, we have never seen or heard of the load management, but now almost every star player taking days and sometimes weeks off. I don't think they have a winning mentality.
Sources say the change will give the league the ability to fine teams more than $1 million each if players violate the new rules. And those are your headlines, guys. Over to you.
All right. Thank you so much,
welcome.
Carly. Okay, stay right there because our friend Lawrence Jones is coming up with a huge announcement and you do not want to miss it.
But first,
imagine this. It's a house that you own and it's overtaken. It's then vandalized and filled with drugs by a squatter. Then that same squatter lists your property for sale. That's exactly what happened to our next guest in Louisiana back in April. And it led to serial squatters and it led to their arrest. But now the guy is back. He's trying it again after being released on bond this week. Here for an exclusive interview on this outrageous story are the homeowners, Richard and Kristen Craven. Richard, I'm going to start with you, and then we're going to get to your wife in just a minute. I know that she uses sign language to communicate, but I'll start with you, Richard. Tell us the story. What happened?
Well, after her parents died, we were monitoring the house, and we noticed a dumpster show up in the driveway, which confused us. So we just started watching, and then we noticed some occupants, and then not long after, we started noticing a lot of traffic coming in and out, and it was clear what they were up to. It was obvious they were selling drugs, and it looked like they were renting rooms to females, or they had a lot of suspicious activity going in. So I didn't confront them. I just sat back and watched them for a while, and then eventually I had all my ducks in a row, so I called the police after I called him stealing the utilities. He broke a water pipe and took the lock off the water company and turned his water back on. So I called the police, and they showed up and basically told me that he has paperwork and you have paperwork. It's a civil matter. So basically sent me back home and left him.
That is unbelievable. Because he put the utility bills in his name, right? So he could show the police, no, I have rights to this house.
Yeah.
But you don't know who this guy is. He didn't rent the house from you, right?
No, he's a total stranger.
That is crazy. So police aren't able to do anything. So what happened next? How was he finally arrested?
Well, that's when I called him busting the water line, and I had the local news station coming. That's when I called the police a second time, and I was quite upset and told them, look, he's done broke the water line. He's stealing water. This is ridiculous. He don't belong there. And they actually went down there and arrested both the occupants that day in April.
And the guy tried to sell the house, right? He tried to sell it for $225,000.
Yes, ma'am.
What happened there?
Well, I had been monitoring realtor sites because I was suspicious, and I was notified that the house was up on the market. And when I seen that, I called the realtor immediately and told him what the situation was. And they pulled the listing, and they had a company in Lake Charles, Louisiana, that had signed some disclosures on it.
Okay.
And so basically, I noticed it fast enough that I was able to roadblock it and
That's
then
good.
get him arrested.
And
And I
you-
thought that was going to be the end of it.
Yeah, and now he's out and he's trying to do it again. Richard, you said this was Kristen's parents' house and they both passed away?
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
And
Well,
we got married in the backyard in 1985 in that house.
well, Kristen, I'm
About
sure
what-
this is devastating for you especially because you have memories there and your parents. It's hard enough to lose your parents, but then when this happens to their house, how does she feel about it?
Well, you know, Kristen's had a real bad run of luck, and she's really struggling to begin with. So it's really had a great impact on her. You know, she has enough stress to deal with, and we do have a lot of family memories of the house. So we're both really upset over it, to say the least.
Well, I hope that you can get him out for good, clean up the house, and use it for either sell it to another family that will make wonderful memories there. I just can't believe this is happening in our country, that the squatters have more rights than the homeowners. Well, God bless you both. Kristen, I wish you the best. You're welcome. All right, coming up, the Biden administration releasing migrants onto Arizona streets. Griff Jenkins has a live report on the border crisis. But first, defending the right to bear arms, a federal judge's block of the New Mexico governor's attempt to suspend gun rights. Court is in session, and Judge Janine weighs in next.
Good morning, everyone. Guess what the #1 trending topic is right now on social media? Hurricane Lee. Yes, we are watching this Category 2 storm. That's the 8 a.m. advisory. It's interacting with some colder air below it in the Atlantic, and we've got, some upper-level winds starting to tear it apart. But we're still thinking a hurricane as we get into the weekend. Landfall across eastern Canada, but this storm is huge, 600 miles wide, so it's going to impact from the mid-Atlantic towards the northeast. We could have storm surge. We certainly are going to have waves upwards of 2 feet in some areas and heavy rainfall in some spots, and then even hurricane force winds for coastal Maine. So take a look at this wind gust forecast, 60 to 100 miles per hour along the coast here. So, and that's going to pile water up here. So I am concerned, especially with coastal flooding. That's going to be a big concern. And then the center of the storm, making landfall, but again, impacts all along the coast. That's the bottom line. We're going to continue to track this. Also, I want you to still have a plan, okay? Because if this wobbles a little bit more to the west, it will be a bigger story for places like Boston up towards Bangor, Maine. So we will continue to monitor this. FoxWeather.com for all of your latest details. Also watching heavy rain for the southern plains and much cooler temperatures across much of the country. That's great news. All right, Pete. Over to you.
Thank you, Janice. I'll see you again in a minute. How about that?
Sounds good.
All right. A federal judge temporarily blocking the governor of New Mexico's plan to suspend the right to legally carry guns in Albuquerque, the state's most dangerous city. Joining us now, the 5 co-hosts, our own judge, Judge Janine Pirro. Judge, great to have you.
Good morning.
Thanks for being here. Good morning. Let me get because the governor's heard now this ruling and is responding yesterday. Here's what the governor said to this ruling. I refuse to be resigned to the status quo. As governor, I see the pain of families who lost their loved ones to gun violence every single day, and I will never stop fighting to prevent other families from enduring these tragedies. So she is hell-bent, Judge, on suspending the Second Amendment.
She can be hell-bent on whatever she wants, but the truth is that she doesn't have the power to suspend the Constitution. I don't know what's worse, her ignorance or her arrogance. Her arrogance in thinking that as a local governor, she's going to suspend the Second Amendment to the Constitution, or her ignorance of the Second Amendment and the fact that the United States Supreme Court has repeatedly affirmed the right of people to carry arms through McDonald, Heller, and just recently in New York in the Bruin case, where they said, you don't have the right to just have it in your home. You could take it with you. So, when she was asked, this governor was asked, do you think this will stop people with illegal guns? She said no. And, but there is no point. If she really wanted to fight crime, she could start getting rid of the cashless bail. She might consider, upping or amping up police departments, making sure that they start closing cases, issuing arrest warrants, do sting operations on gun, sales. I mean, there's a million things she could do. But the arrogance, and by the way, as soon as she said it, her own attorney general said, that's unconstitutional. I'm not going to defend you. And the judge who says this is unconstitutional, was appointed by Biden. So I don't know if she's just trying to up her profile. I'm a female governor. Maybe you want to think about me, and as the party starts moving away from Joe Biden, which I think is starting to be kind of a given, given David Ignatius's column the other day. But it's a sad commentary on the left totalitarian kind of thinking that we're going to suspend the Constitution on a public health emergency. You can't, you won't, and that's the end of it.
Well said. We've got a little authoritarian in New Mexico that's trying to usurp the Constitution. But you've got a great new special on Fox Nation. I will get. Yes. By the way, I don't know if you can get a shot of the judge's shoes today, but they're befitting her new series called The Life of Luxury. Here's a preview on Fox Nation, Life of Luxury with Judge Jeanine. Watch.
Are you ready for your next shot?
Are you?
Yeah, you're doing great. You've got this. Okay. So again, wide shoulders, strong stance. That's on target.
Not bad. I've seen. There we go. Look at that.
They are.
Bam, on point this morning.
Thank you.
At 8:30 in the morning. Tell us about it.
Well, look, this is a great new show. I'm very excited about this one, Life of Luxury with Judge Jeanine. We go and look at some of the most prestigious, maybe not so well-known hotels in secluded areas around the country, from the Ocean House in Maine, Castle Hot Springs in Arizona, Little Palm Island and the Keys in the Florida Keys. All of these places are unique. They are spectacular in their own way. A lot of them are, like farm to table. They have hot springs. Some of them have carriages. I've never seen hotels like this. And I got to tell you, Pete, I'm really excited about this special. I think you will be too when you see how some people live a life of luxury and they enjoy it on a regular basis. For me, I enjoy it for one night, but we can all dream, Pete.
You know how to do it. First Castle's now Life of Luxury. We'll be watching. Great stuff.
Thanks, Pete. Good to see you.
Available right now on Fox Nation. The